Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Spirit. This will be Part 9, Chapter 9, entitled Festival. Izuku isn't physically injured beyond scrapes and bruises, but his parents make him get checked out in the ambulance anyway. Izuku, you just experienced a tidal wave of paranormal activity, Hisashi tells him from where he's walking next to him. Aizawa's already in an ambulance. He's not too badly hurt, but he is exhausted, and he has a few injuries that need to be cleaned and bandaged. I'm fine, Dad, Izuku lies, and Hisashi clearly isn't impressed. They reach the ambulance where Aizawa was being treated, and Izuku sits down next to a paramedic, dizzy and exhausted. This is my son, Izuku, Hisashi tells the paramedic. He sustained minor injuries, but I'm mostly worried about quirk exhaustion. The paramedic nods, pulling out a few things and standing in front of Izuku. All right, Izuku. Do you have any chronic conditions? Izuku shakes his head, dutifully holding out his arm so he can get his blood pressure taken. The medic checks his pulse, pupils, and scans his body for obvious injury. All right, well, I do see some cuts and bruises, which we can handle right now, the paramedic says, removing her glove. My quirk can heal minor injuries. Are you all right if I touch you and use it? Izuku nods and she touches his skin, all injuries vanishing after a moment. He's still exhausted, though, and has a pounding headache. So, quirk exhaustion, she asks next. Please explain your quirk to me, and its drawbacks so I can assist you. Izuku hesitates a little, but Hisashi's presence nearby gives him the courage to tell the truth. My quirk is called Haunt, Izuku says quietly, not looking her in the eye. I can see, hear, and feel ghosts. There were a lot of them in the USJ, and one of them briefly possessed me, so I'm feeling exhausted. Izuku looks up when she doesn't respond, seeing her disbelieving face looking between him and Hisashi. Well, that's interesting, Izuku, she says, clearly not believing a single word. But, I need to call my supervisor over here. I don't have experience with quirks like that. Quirks like what? Hisashi snaps next to her, and she winces. Sorry, Present Mike, sir. It's just, they don't really cover ghost and paranormal possession in medical school, she says apologetically, although Izuku can see her shift uncomfortably. Dad, I'm fine. Let's go, Izuku mumbles to Hisashi, just wanting to get out of the ambulance and go home. It's just the tired I normally feel after possession. I'll be okay. Izuku hops down off the edge of the ambulance, and he hears his dad say something angrily to the medic before walking away, his hand wrapped around Izuku's shoulders. So ignorant, Hisashi hisses under his breath. Kid, I'm so sorry. Let's just go find your dad and we'll go home, all right? Do you want me to call Recovery Girl to come over and look at you? Izuku shakes his head. He's honestly fine. He just needs sleep and maybe a solid week to process everything that he saw today. Hisashi steers him over to Aizawa, who's looking exhausted but healed as he stands talking to Recovery Girl and Principal Nezu. Izuku, Aizawa exhales, walking over to hug his son before squeezing Hisashi's hand. Glad you're okay, kid. Is Oboro with you? Izuku shakes his head. No, he disappeared. Could you really see him, Dad? Aizawa nods, Hisashi's eyes widening in surprise. Yeah, I could. For a split second. I don't know if you remember, but this has happened once before when you were very little. You were arguing with Bakugo in school and Oboro stepped in to protect you. Bakugo saw him for a second, too. Izuku remembers this vaguely, his stomach churning. Normally, he's not worried about Oboro because Oboro is already dead. But the weird warp villain from the USJ, the odd way Oboro was flickering in and out of existence, Izuku doesn't know what to think. I don't know what happened, Izuku says honestly, rubbing his forehead. There were just so many ghosts, Dad. The villain with all the hands on him. Tomura Shigaraki, Principal Nezu says calmly, looking up at Izuku with a glint in his eye. Head of an organization called the League of Villains, and we believe the orchestrator of the attack today. Izuku just stares for a moment before processing that. Well, Shigaraki, he had a whole dead family behind him. And sometimes spirits don't know they're dead, but these people did. And the other villains, there were so many ghosts screaming and crying. They were trying to warn us, to get us out. I've never seen anything like it. Fascinating, Nezu says, but Izuku doesn't respond. His parents are looking at him with concern, Hisashi squeezing his shoulder, and Aizawa just taking in Izuku's tired eyes, and his spirit-touched wispy blue hair and eyes. I think it's time to go home, Aizawa says calmly. Chio, thank you. Nezu will be back in school tomorrow. Izuku, your dad and I are taking you home now, okay? Izuku nods, exhaustion creeping up on him so much he's starting to sway on his feet. He walks outside to where Hisashi haphazardly parked his car, clearly having broken the speed limit to get here if the skid marks are anything to go by. Izuku's heart aches. Hisashi must have been terrified to know his husband and son were trapped with villains today. Is everyone else all right? Izuku asks once he's in the back seat, the faces of his friends flashing through his mind. Yes, no one else is injured, Aizawa says calmly from the passenger seat. Kaminari overused his quirk a little, and he is exhausted from running all the way back to UA to get help. But everyone's all right. We were very lucky today. Izuku doesn't respond, just stares out the window and thinks through everything he saw today. The ghosts, the villain, Oboro. It's a lot to process, and Izuku doesn't have the answers. The next day in class, Izuku listens to Aizawa praise them all for their actions at the USJ and announce the upcoming UA Sports Festival. The annual event was a way for students to get their names out there, to show off their quirks, and for students from the support department to test gadgets and inventions. Izuku listens, but he's distracted. Oboro still hasn't appeared. During lunch, Izuku sneaks off to the cafeteria to talk to two ghosts he sees hanging around there frequently. One is the ghost of a UA student, in an older uniform who has no face, and the other is an old woman with wildly colorful outfit who likes to whack students with her cane as they pass by, yelling at them for looking sloppy. The two ghosts are often together, so Izuku approaches them respectfully with a bow. Hello, he says, watching them both turn to him slowly. My name is Izuku, and I'm a first year. I can see ghosts and spirits, and I'm looking for someone. Can you help me? The ghost with no face just tilts her head to the right until it's nearly completely horizontal, making an odd humming noise. The older woman crosses her arms, staring at him with a squint. Izuku, you say? She asks, brandishing her cane. Why haven't you introduced yourself before? That's bad manners. That's what it is. Kids these days, no respect. Izuku bows lower, secretly hoping no one is watching this, watching him bow to nothing. I'm very sorry, ma'am. The woman laughs delightedly, her personality almost completely switching when she giggles. Ooh, a proper apology. Izuku looks up to see the old woman has changed into a much younger girl, maybe 13 or 14. She's still in the same clothes, but she grins at Izuku now, her form undulating slightly. The faceless ghost doesn't react at all, their heads still sideways. Please, do either of you know Oboro Shirakumo? Izuku asks. He's a ghost who died when he was 17 and a UA student. He's almost always with me, but there was a villain fight a few days ago, and I haven't seen him since. The faceless ghost raises their head slightly and shakes it, while the woman with the cane squints and sighs. No, sorry. Come talk to us sometime, though, Izuku. You're interesting. Both ghosts vanish then, and Izuku just sighs, rubbing his forehead. He supposes it was a long shot. The rest of the week goes by without a major incident as they train for the sports festival. Izuku trains mainly with Hitoshi, who fights essentially quirkless like Aizawa. Izuku can't access Oboro's quirk without him, and there's been no sign of him returning, so Izuku isn't sure if he'll be able to use his quirk at all during the sports festival. There are, of course, dozens of other ghosts around, but it had taken years for him and Oboro to work up to the possession and quirk usage. Izuku would have no time to bond with another ghost like that, so he works with Hitoshi using a capture weapon and also his quarterstaff. You know, you don't need Oboro to use your quirk to your advantage, Hitoshi tells him when they're on a break from training. You say almost everyone's got ghosts, right? Couldn't you start talking about them to people? That'd freak most people out, right? Izuku shrugs. I suppose, but it doesn't seem very nice. I mean, what if it's something really sensitive? The sports festival is televised. I wouldn't want to air someone's tragedy on TV just to win a school event. Well, when you put it that way, I feel like an asshole for suggesting it, Hitoshi says gruffly, leaning back against the gym wall. Well, hopefully, you don't have to fight Shoto or Katsuki. They'd cream us both without our quirks. Izuku actually laughs. No way! You'd just have to make Katon mad, and then you could brainwash him in a second. And I hate to say it, but Shoto's not fighting up to his full potential, since he won't use his fire. I'm hoping that he'll use it during the festival, though. Oboro appears suddenly the night before the sports festival, looking the same as always. Izuku sits up in bed with a gasp when he sees him, turning on the light and feeling more than relieved. You're okay, he exclaims, looking at Oboro. I was worried, Nisan. I don't remember what happened, Oboro says slowly. The last thing I remember is the attack at the USJ. Is everyone all right? Izuku explains everything that happened quietly, Oboro's eyes widening a little at the mentions of the warp villain and Izuku essentially forcing Oboro to possess him. I don't remember, Oboro says quietly, floating a few inches off the ground with his legs crossed. I don't remember any of that at all. I wonder what was up with that villain, the one with the warp quirk. You said he reacted to me. Izuku nods. Yeah, it was weird. He didn't have any ghosts or spirits around him. Maybe his warp capabilities give him the ability to see spiritual energy or something. Maybe, Oboro says, although he looks a little disturbed. Anyway, kid, sports festival. I heard Shota and Zashi talking about it. Are you ready to kick butt tomorrow? Izuku smiles, relieved Oboro's back. Yeah, I am. Do you want to help? You know it, Oboro grins. Now come on, let's talk strategy. Izuku is standing at the starting line, getting ready for the first event. It had been pretty intense walking out into the crowded, loud stadium. The screaming over almost 50,000 people, on top of the ghosts and spirits in the area, were more than overwhelming. Fortunately, Izuku had been proactive and worn earplugs, so the noise didn't completely debilitate him. The first event is simple, a race, but Izuku is fairly sure that there will be some combat that they'll need to do. It's a bit surreal being down in the stadium while his parents are commentating over the PA, hoping he doesn't give them any heart attacks today. It's not exactly a secret that Izuku is Aizawa and Hizashi's son, but he doesn't like to broadcast it, especially at school. He's already looked at weirdly for his quirk, but being the son of two of his teachers would just make him more of an oddity. It's Hisashi who starts the race in his full-on present mic persona. Izuku shares a fond, exasperated look with Oboro, getting into position to run. Ready! And start! Once the race begins, a few of Izuku's classmates are off like a shot. Shoto skating on ice, Katsuki using explosions to propel him forward, and Ida is running at top speed, using his engines to propel him. Hitoshi is swinging on his capture weapon, keeping up with the top of the group. Izuku's walking. It probably looks stupid, arrogant, and foolish to the crowd, but Izuku just closes his eyes and lets Oboro step into his body. He feels the familiar, cool sensation of making contact with a spirit, and Oboro snaps Izuku's eyes open. Oh, what's this? Folks, check back to the starting line. It's Class 1A's Izuku. Let's see what he has planned. Izuku notices that Hisashi tactfully doesn't use his last name, but Oboro just grins, snapping his fingers and summoning a cloud large enough to sit on. Oboro climbs Izuku's body onto it, before whispering a quiet, "Go." The cloud speeds off, and soon they're shooting not only over most of the other racers, but over the robots that have plopped up on the race course as well. Within a minute, Izuku's caught up to the top 3 students and the finish line is in sight. Ida crosses the finish line first, followed just shortly by Katsuki and Shoto, and then Izuku. He hears Hisashi calling out the winning names, but Oboro just smiles at Izuku's friends, hopping Izuku's body off the cloud and sending it away before gently stepping out of his body. Told you I'd kick your asses. Katsuki smirks to Shoto and Izuku before turning to Ida. Oi, Four Eyes, I'm gonna kill you in the next event. That language is not becoming of a UA student, Bakugo. Izuku just laughs, walking with Shoto to the next area. A large number of students were disqualified after the first event, leaving only the top 42 students to complete in the next one. Up next, we have a team event, a cavalry battle. Students, put yourselves into groups of 4. You have 15 minutes. Izuku looks at Shoto and Katsuki, who both shrug. Hitoshi walks over, and they silently agree to be a group. A few students try to partner with one of them, but they explain that they're already a team. Midnight comes over the PA and explains the rules to them all, Izuku taking it in as best he can. All right, let's talk strategy, Katsuki says as they sit down on the ground. So we each have headbands with points on them. We just need to steal the most points to win, easy. Izuku, get the ghost to grab them or some shit. Icy Hot, ice the ground and make everyone slip up. Hitoshi, brainwash the fucks and just swipe them. I'll carry Izuku. They spend the next few minutes hashing out a real strategy, and soon Midnight is over the PA announcing the start of the event. The cavalry battle is fierce, but after a long-fought battle, their team wins. We kicked ass out there. Hitoshi grins at the 3 of them. But now it's the real events, the one-on-one matches. Think we'll be fighting each other? Katsuki grins, looking a little bloodthirsty. We better be. There's a break for lunch after the cavalry battle as the teachers figure out the matches for the one-on-one fights. Izuku eats with his classmates, watching Shoto a little curiously. His new friend seems subdued, and Izuku hasn't seen him use his fire at all. After they finish lunch, Shoto notices Izuku staring and walks over to him. "Can I talk to you?" Shoto asks quietly. "Outside." Izuku nods, looking at Oboro briefly, who simply shrugs. Izuku follows Shoto out to the deserted hallway, looking with confusion up at him. "You've been staring at me," Shoto says bluntly, leaning against the wall. "I was wondering if you were seeing a ghost." Izuku's stomach clenches. Oh. Shoto was actually one of the few in 1A who didn't have ghosts hanging around him, and he's a bit unsure of what to say. "I was wondering if you could see my brother," Shoto continues quietly, looking at the floor. "He was 13 when he died." Izuku's heart aches for his friend, but he can't lie. "I'm sorry, Shoto. There aren't any ghosts around you. I've never seen any near you. That's not a bad thing, though. My mom died when I was 4, and I never see her because she moved on. Maybe your brother did too." "He wouldn't have," Shoto says softly, almost a whisper. "He definitely didn't die in peace." Izuku swallows hard. "What do you mean?" And Shoto tells him how his father Endeavor, the number 2 hero, hurt and abused his family. How Shoto's mother went insane and burned him with boiling water. How his brother Toya had burned to death on top of a mountain due to Endeavor's negligence. When Shoto was done talking, Izuku has tears in his eyes. He's never met someone with such a painful story, and Izuku wishes he could help in some way. "Is that why you don't use your fire?" Izuku asks softly, seeing Shoto nod. "Yes, I refuse to use his quirk," Shoto says, folding his arms. "Not after what he did." Izuku doesn't know what to say to that, but he feels a cool tap on his arm. Oboro is there, looking serious, more serious than he's ever seen him. Izuku just nods to show his consent, and Oboro steps into his body. Izuku sees Shoto's eyes widen slightly when Izuku's eyes begin to glow white. "Shoto," Oboro says calmly, reaching out Izuku's arm to grip Shoto's shoulder gently. "It's not Endeavor's quirk. It's yours, kid. Endeavor just makes hellfire, right? But you, thermal manipulation, shit, the things you could do? Your possibilities are endless. Don't let a shitty parent stop you from being your best." Shoto's eyes are wide as he says, "I can't use my fire. I haven't used it in so long. I'd lose control." "Nah," Oboro grins. "You've got it, kid. You can do it. Just remember that Endeavor doesn't control you, and light it up." Izuku gasps when Oboro steps out of him, his eyes fading back to blue-green. Shoto looks a little stunned, but Izuku wants to reinforce what Oboro said. "He's right," Izuku says quietly. "It's your quirk, Shoto, not his. You can do this. You're probably the most powerful person in our entire class. And Toya, he had a fire quirk, right? Doesn't that make your quirk like his?" Shoto starts, his mouth opening as if he hasn't considered that. "Like Toya's?" "Yeah," Izuku says quietly. "Think of it like Toya's. You're honoring your brother's memory when you use your quirk. Would that help?" "Yes," Shoto says, eyes distant. That helps. Thank you, Izuku. And Oboro, too." After a rest in the locker rooms, Izuku is called up for his first match, where he's fighting Tokoyami. "I look forward to our match," Tokoyami says calmly as they walk out to the roar of the crowd. "Dark Shadow is as well." Izuku nods and he and Tokoyami turn to face one another on opposite sides of the ring. Izuku has his earplugs back in to stop the roar of the crowd and the ghosts in the stands from distracting him. "And here, folks, we have 2 of the spookiest students in 1A. It's Fumikage Tokoyami versus Izuku. You're in for a great match here, folks. Isn't that right, Eraserhead?" "That's right," Aizawa says over the PA, sounding like he'd rather be doing anything else than public speaking. Izuku smirks. Tokoyami controls a sentient quirk called Dark Shadow, and Izuku's quirk allows him to team up with ghosts and use spirit possession. There's murmurings in the crowd at this, and Izuku is expecting disbelief. It doesn't matter. "That's right, folks. This little listener can see and talk to ghosts. Let's see how it goes down. Take your places, students." Izuku slides one foot back behind him, putting his hands up in front of him as Oboro steps in behind him, sliding into his body as they had discussed. Izuku feels the icy cold sensation spread through him, and he can see his hair start to undulate and move, and his eyes glow bright white up on the large screens in the stadium. Tokoyami has simultaneously called Dark Shadow out, who's cackling behind him, looking at Izuku with excitement. 3, 2, 1. Start! Tokoyami rushes at Izuku with Dark Shadow, and Oboro quickly spins Izuku's body out of the way, dodging the attacks. Nice form! Oboro laughs at Dark Shadow, calling a cloud and riding on it to get around to the other side of him. Here, Izuku, take charge! Oboro pops out of Izuku and jumps in front of Dark Shadow to create clouds that the audience can't see. Izuku uses his quarterstaff to support him as he leans on it and aims a kick at Tokoyami. While Dark Shadow is busy being distracted by Oboro, Izuku and Tokoyami fight hand-to-hand. This is fascinating, folks, Hisashi says over the PA, and Izuku can hear pride in his dad's voice. Dark Shadow is currently fighting a ghost while Izuku and Tokoyami fight one another. That's the power of paranormal quirks, everyone. Izuku can sense Tokoyami tiring, and he hears Dark Shadow growling at Oboro when Izuku manages to get one good, solid kick to Tokoyami's legs, knocking him out of the ring. And that's the match, folks. Izuku is the winner. There's applause and cheering, but it's subdued, and Izuku knows there will be people who don't really understand what kind of fight they just saw. Izuku walks out of the ring, helping Tokoyami to his feet, while Oboro consoles Dark Shadow, scratching him on the head. That was very impressive, Tokoyami tells him as they walk out of the ring. I would be honored to spar with you sometime, Izuku. I'd really like that, Izuku beams. Thanks, Tokoyami. Good luck on the rest of your matches, Tokoyami says sagely, leaving Izuku and Oboro alone. Once they enter the tunnel under the stadium, Oboro reaches over and ruffles Izuku's hair, grinning happily. Nice work, kid, Oboro smiles. We make an awesome team. Come on, let's see who you'll be fighting next so you can strategize. Izuku goes back to the locker rooms, watching the next series of fights on the television downstairs. He watches a dozen matches, impressed with his classmates as they take on one another, and students from 1B and 1C. Izuku watches Itoshi win a few fights before he's finally defeated by Shoto, who Izuku is happy to see uses his fire. Eventually, it's Izuku's turn again, and this time he's up against Katsuki. He's a little anxious going into the fight, but Oboro puts a comforting hand on his shoulder. He's sparred with Katsuki enough growing up to know how his friend fights, but Katsuki also won't be shocked by anything Izuku and Oboro can do. Ready to die, nerd, Katsuki says with a grin as they step into the ring. You wish, Kachan, Izuku snorts. Don't blow up any spectators trying to hit me. Katsuki just grins, looking a little feral. It's the explosive Katsuki Bakugo versus the haunted Izuku, Hisashi calls over the PA. These two are childhood friends, and know each other very well, so this should be an exciting match, folks. When the match starts, Katsuki doesn't hold back. Izuku dodges 3, 4, 5 explosions as he slides on his knees on the ring, eyes flashing white as Oboro steps into his body. This time, Izuku is in charge, using Oboro's quirk to create clouds between him and Katsuki, hearing Katsuki curse. You two are fucking cheating, Katsuki snarls. Face me, Izuku. Stop hiding. Izuku grins, skidding under the clouds to end up right behind Katsuki, jumping on his back and wrapping around him. What the fuck? Katsuki spits out. Izuku, get off! Izuku uses his strength to jump off of Katsuki and flip him onto his back. He's just about to knock him with his quarterstaff when Katsuki kicks Izuku's legs out from under him. Fuck, he's good, Oboro curses in Izuku's head. Come on, you can do this, Izuku. Izuku gets on his feet and dodges another explosion, using more of Oboro's energy to surge forward quickly, wrapping clouds around Katsuki's legs. He pulls back a fist, eye surging with glowing light, just at the same time as Katsuki hits him with an explosion. It knocks both of them back, the explosion big enough that it silences the cheering crowd and the ghosts around Izuku. Izuku is thrown back out of the ring, collapsing onto the ground, unmoving. Ouch, Oboro says sympathetically to Izuku's right. That blast knocked me right out of you. You still alive, kid? Izuku coughs, rolling onto his back and giving Oboro a tired thumbs up. Katsuki Bakugo is the winner, Midnight calls over the PA, and Izuku realizes his dads aren't announcing anymore. Izuku sits up, his head swimming, as he's rushed off the field into a tunnel under the stadium. His vision blurs and he blacks out. When he wakes up, he has a killer headache and he's looking up at the two anxious faces of his parents. Izu, you okay? Aizawa asks, leaning forward. Hisashi, he's awake. Ow, is what Izuku says as he sits up with a wince. That hurt a lot. Hisashi laughs, although his eyes are worried. Yeah, I bet it did. Katsuki and Shoto are fighting with the final match right now. You've been out for a bit. Izuku considers this. Who got third? Yaoyorozu, Aizawa says calmly, looking up at the television screen. And Shota just beat Katsuki, so it looks like he won. I've never seen him use his fire before today. Wonder what changed. Oboro talked to him, Izuku says, happy for his friend. He convinced him to use it. Hizashi and Aizawa both look pleased at that, and Izuku's head swims. I feel awful. Can we go home? Yeah, we can, Aizawa murmurs, leaning over to kiss Izuku's forehead. Come on, kid. Let's get you home. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 9 of Spirit. Chapter 10 will be up next. Hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.